So, good morning, students. So, in our present class, let us study about the Mauryan Empire. So, who are the as part of the reduced syllabus, we have just covered only, few aspects in this chapter. So, let us study what is this Mauryan Empire, how it emerged, and what are its administrators in the later part of the chapter. So, in this, let us begin with the Mauryas. So, who are these Mauryas? So, the Mauryan Empire, it was founded in the 4th century BC by a person named Chandragupta Maurya. So, these people, no, this man Chandragupta Maurya, he was the founder of Mauryan Empire. So, what he did, he was once working under the Magadha and all. So, these Mauryans were once working under Magadha rulers, and later Chandragupta Maurya, he became emperor. Now, how did Chandragupta Maurya became the ruler, and how he you know uh, how he became a powerful emperor, as well as how he created a vast empire, that we will see. So he organized a powerful army and laid the foundation of a vast empire. So Chandragupta Maurya, he first organized a very vast army, that means powerful army. Then he overthrew the Nandas from Magadha. So Magadha was one of the powerful empire controlling all the other kingdoms in India, especially the North India. So this Magadha was under the Nandas. Okay, so these Nandas were overthrown. That means they were defeated by Chandragupta Maurya, and he occupied this Magadha kingdom or empire. And also he occupied he also defeated the Greek satraps from the northwest frontier and unified a large part of Indian subcontinent. So, for example, if you just take this as an India map, so this is just a rough map I'm which I'm drawing. Okay, so just think that roughly just imagine like this. So Magadha was one part which was occupied by Chandragupta Maurya, and you can call this as northwestern frontier. So this entire province was under the control of Mauryan. So here in the northwestern provinces, earlier what Alexander did was he came here and he occupied these places, and he kept some commanders as in charges for this. So they were called Greek satraps. That means they were the Greek in charges who were ruling the northwest frontier. So the administration of the northwest portion of India was carried by Greek satraps. Satrap means he was an administrative in charge who looks after all the affairs of northwestern India. So when Alexander entered India and he occupied all these places, he kept some in charges there, and he left. So those in charges later proclaimed themselves as kings, and they were ruling these northwestern areas. Now Chandragupta Maurya, he defeated these Greek satraps as well as Nandas of Magadha, and he created a large empire in the Indian subcontinent. You can imagine all this under the Mauryan Empire. So under his centralized government, that means all the governance was kept under him, and his successor Bindusara kept the Mauryan Empire intact and further extended its boundaries. So after the death of Chandragupta Maurya, then his son was Bindusara. So his son Bindusara also looked after the Mauryan Empire to be united. So he didn't made he was a very powerful ruler, and he kept all the empire also very much unified, and he even expanded Mauryan Empire to some extent also. Along with keeping the already existing empire unified, he also extended this empire to some other places. And the rule of Bindusara's son Ashoka constitutes one of the brightest periods in the Indian history. So, Bindusara's son. So, here first is Chandragupta Maurya, then Bindusara, after Bindusara, then his son Ashoka. So, this Ashoka was very famous and his rule was one of the brightest periods in Indian history. The rule of Ashoka was referred as historians as one of the brightest historical days. After the Kalinga War, Ashoka devoted his life to human welfare. So, the only king in the world who left all the warfare and joined for the human welfare it was for the first time Ashoka did that thing. So his position in historically was very significant, and the war he did was Kalinga War. After this war, he got so much moved, he got so much you know sympathy, and he was very much changed, so that he started consider his subjects, that means his people, as his children. After he saw the war, there was a lot of changes in him. Under that, he started looking after the welfare of people. So he started considering his people as his children. He built many marvels in art and architecture. So in terms of art and architecture also, Ashoka's contribution was very much immense or big, some of which have survived even up to this day. So the constructions, the art forms that were encouraged during Ashoka's time even exist today. So let us study how the historians came to know about Mauryans. So the sources from which historians understood who are these Mauryans, they have been categorized into literary sources, and the other one is archaeological sources. So literary sources means the books or whatever the written material available of those period, and archaeological means the constructions, the architecture which was available of those age or period. So let us understand what are the literary sources that reveal us the great information about these Mauryans. First literary source was Ardhashastra of Kautilya. So of all the literary sources on the history of Mauryas, important source of literature or written material available was or is Ardhashastra. So this book written by Chanakya. So it was written by Kautilya, also known as Vishnugupta and Chanakya. So this man has different names. So Ardhashastra, which was a book with a lot of information about Mauryans, was written by Kautilya or Vishnugupta or Chanakya. He was advisor and prime minister of Chandragupta Maurya. So it was because of this man Kautilya or Chanakya, Chandragupta Maurya could capture Magadha and other the north and western province and create a very vast Mauryan empire because of his help only. So this man's book Ardhashastra is written in which language? Sanskrit language. And what does this book deal about? It is a comprehensive manual. That means it includes many things. Like what things this book includes? It deals with politics. So those days, how the political situations were there, all such information was provided, and the rules of diplomacy. That means how a king has to maintain relations with other neighboring kings, or how to deal with others politically. All such rules of diplomacy were also written, and principles of administration. So how to rule people and how to rule the kingdom or empire. So all such principles were also. So what does this Arthashastra include? It deals with politics, rules of diplomacy, and principles of administration. So these three were included in this Arthashastra. So Mauryan politics, how Mauryans were diplomatic, even in general also how a king has to rule, all such information no, regarding administration. No, this what they were provided in Kautilya's Ardhashastra. So the book was discovered in 1909 and its English translation is now available. So this book was available through various source. I mean, this book was available through the ancient scriptures, how we are getting, and other ways and means. And the other book, which the literature, which reveals the information of Mauryans, was Indica. Who wrote this book? Megasthenes. Who was this Megasthenes? He was a Greek ambassador at the court of Chandragupta Maurya. So this man, Megasthenes, was an ambassador. That means he came as a representative to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. So who was the Greek ruler who has sent him? Seleucus. So Seleucus Nicator was a Greek ruler who was settling during the northwestern areas and all. So this man Seleucus has sent an ambassador by name Megasthenes. So Megasthenes was sent to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, the founder, and he wrote a book. Okay, this man Megasthenes, who came as a visitor or representative to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, he wrote a book. What is that book? The name of the book was Indica. What does this book Indica contains? It contains the impressions of what he heard and saw during his stay in India. So whatever Megasthenes has seen in the court of Chandragupta Maurya or his kingdom and other such things, he recorded all those information in his book Indica. And Megasthenes' original Indica has been lost, but its fragments still survive in the writings of later Greek authors like Strabo, Arrian, and Diodorus. So what do you mean by this? The original book of Indica is no longer existing, but referring Indica, many other Greek scholars have uh, kept some information to suppose this man, Strabo, Arrian, who are the later Greek writers, they have written some information taking from Indica. So, thus this information in Indica was saved in later writings of authors like Strabo, Arrian, and Diodorus. So those two books served as literary sources. So the other sources of information through which we know about Aryans is archaeological sources. So what do you mean by archaeological sources? So when these archaeologists dug the deeper layers of earth, when they carry out excavations, suppose if the archaeologists go around the Magadha, the Kalinga and other areas, so when they excavate these, the deeper layers of earth or something like that, then what happens? They get some evidences, physical evidences. Those are called archaeological sources. What is that first kind of physical evidence that available of Mauryans? They were the edicts of Ashoka. What do you mean by edict? Edict means an order. So there were some orders issued by the great king Ashoka. So these edicts is a decree issued by a sovereign, that means a king or an emperor. So the orders of an emperor were called edicts, and these orders were found in the excavations made by archaeologists. So the edicts of Ashoka form the most important source of Mauryan history. So these edicts are the official orders issued by Ashoka. They help in the understanding of Ashoka's or the Mauryan Empire or the ruling of Mauryans or the history of Mauryans. They are the oldest, best preserved, and precisely dated records of India. So the oldest available records and also best preserved. So why they were called best preserved, that we will discuss in the later. So they are best preserved and precisely means very detailed and dated records. That means there are also mention of date. So during which time period this was written. All such information is there on this orders issued by Ashoka. These edicts are inscribed on rocks and pillars. So why I call it as best preserved is, you can see an Ashokan edict. This is a rock. On this rock, there is some information inscribed. Inscribed means with some letters or characters. They have issued some orders, and this order is on rock. Okay, they have inscribed, that means using nail and hammer with some characters or alphabets, they have inscribed this information on rocks and pillars. Now we can say why it is justifying this term best present, as rocks and these pillars, they never perish, so they are the best way to reveal the information of them. So throughout the country, such edicts were present in the when archaeologists excavated, and it includes 14 major rock edicts. So among the various edicts available or the orders available, 14 were very, very important, and 7 pillar edicts were also very important. And there are number of minor rock edicts, that means on smaller rocks and all, some kind of orders were issued by Ashoka. So these inscriptions, what do you mean by inscription here? Making them to write on a rock or inscribe them on a rock using a hammer and nail with some characters or alphabets, that is called inscription. So these inscriptions on these edicts provide a useful insight into life and ideals of Ashoka. So these 14 rock edicts and 7 pillar edicts, that means on a pillar this is some kind of information will be there. So and 7 pillar edicts and some minor rock edicts, these all things were revealing information about the life of Ashoka and also what were his ideals or principles, and in particular about the history of Mauryas in general. So along with the information of Ashoka and his ideals, it was also the information of Mauryas in general was available on this rock edicts. So the most important event of Ashoka's rule, so here reign means his rule, was the conquest of Kalinga. So the entire Mauryan, by this time, Chandragupta Maurya and Bindusara, no, they could not conquer Kalinga. This was only left in the northern part of India or the central portion of India. So Ashoka thought of occupying this place, and the indescribable sufferings and atrocities of Kalinga war deeply touched Ashoka's conscience. That means the way the war was fought, the cruelties that he saw after the war was finished. Ashoka went to the battlefield and observed. He saw a lot of women coming and crying for the dead bodies and the atrocities, that means the kind of bloodshed that happened in that war. It has deeply touched Ashoka's conscience. That means his moral behavior. He felt very much bad about the way he did the war, Kalinga war. So he felt very much moved and touched at the the panic, or what you call the kind of atmosphere in the battlefield, and he made a solemn resolve. Here what do you mean by solemn means? He has decided formally, he has decided to take not to take up arms anymore. So after Kalinga war, he could not, he was deeply touched and he could not do any more wars. So he solemnly resolved, that means he formally decided not to take up arms anymore. And the war drum, Bheri Gosha, was silenced forever. That means those days the kings and all, whenever they used to go for war, they used to beat the drum. So that Bheri Gosha or the war drum, he permanently made it a silent forever, and henceforth were heard only the echoes of Dhamma Gosha. So in the place of this war drum, the Dhamma or the principles proposed by Ashoka, they were making more sound rather than this war sounds. The principles or the principles of peace, harmony, all such things were later preached by Ashoka. They were called Dhamma Gosha. So that Dhamma Ghosha was making more sound. That means his principles were more popular after Kalinga War than his ideology of war, which he gave up. And Dhammaghosha generally speaks about the non-violence and universal peace. These two concepts of Ashoka became so popular and they were making a lot of popularity or lot of name. They bought a lot of name for Ashoka. So in pursuance of his policy of non-violence, Ashoka did some activities. So what are those activities which he did to continue the policy of non-violence? So what he did, prohibited killing of animals for sacrifices. So in the name of sacrifice and religion, nobody should kill animals. That he made as a rule. Also advocated restraint in the number that has to be killed for consumption. So those who want to eat these animals as a non-vegetarian food, they should also, Ashoka said, you should have a restraint. That means there must be some limitation and restriction in killing animals for eating purpose. He didn't prohibit it for killing animals for eating, but he asked people to limit the usage. He also protected some of the animals and in general condemned cruel acts against animals. So he was very much concerned about the animals. So he asked not to kill them, use them little for your food, and also any cruel acts against animals were not tolerated by Ashoka. So this kindness towards animals which was brought by Ashoka was very clear in the Rock Edict 1. Okay, in the Rock Edict 1 or the orders of Ashoka 1, there was a clear mention of his concern towards animals. So what was that? Formerly in the great refectory and temple of the heaven beloved King Piyadasi, that means, so here refectory means a place where people gather and have meals or food. So and the temple of the heaven beloved King Piyadasi. That means those days kings were referred as Piyadasi. That means they were very kind in ruling and all. So they used to refer the king as Piyadasi. That means what you need to understand is there is a place where king used to organize good meals, non-vegetarian meals. So in a big hall, okay. So and daily in that hall meals were served with non-vegetarian food. For that meals, many hundred and thousands of animals sacrificed for the sake of meat food. So this place where they used to, which is called refectory, you know, the kind king used to organize meat food daily. So for this meat food, many animals were sacrificed. Thousands of animals were sacrificed daily. Now, at this day, while this religious edict is under promulgation, so the Rock Edict 1 is describing all these things. That earlier there were hundreds and thousands of animals killed just for the sake of meat food. Now, from the sacrifice of animals for the sake of food, some two are killed or one is killed. So while this edict, now this edict is in operational, it is functional, right? According to this edict, you should not harm animals for food. So as this Rock Edict is saying that when this Rock Edict 1 is in promulgation, that means when it is in operational, as Ashoka said, we should restrict the usage of animals for food. So earlier there were thousands of thousand and hundred animals were used for killing. Now they were just restricting themselves to killing two or one. Okay, according to Rock Edict 1, everybody has to follow that. So from hundreds within the king's palace, the animal sacrifices have been reduced from thousands and hundreds to just one or two. But now the joyful chorus resounds again and again that henceforward single animal shall be put to death. Not a single animal shall be put to death. So from hundreds to thousands to one or two, and someday definitely there will be not even a single animal put to death for food. So this Rock Edict 1 reveals how Ashoka has implemented his own orders from his palace. So this Rock Edict 1 will reveal this information. So this was revealed, translated by James Prinsep. He was an English scholar who understood the ancient languages like Brahmi script and all, and he translated this into English. So This was about Rock Addict 1 and its information. So among the stupas, another archaeological revealing or architectural reveal which served as an archaeological source was the Sanchi Stupa. Okay, so a stupa is a semi-spherical solid dome-like structure. So you can see in this picture here, this is a semi-spherical dome-like structure, and it was made of unburnt bricks and stones. So this entire construction was made up of unburnt bricks and stones directly. So what is this stupa made up of? It was made up of unburnt bricks and stones. So the Buddhist stupa has a special significance. So you may get doubt, how come this Buddhist stupa, which is present here, will reveal the information about Mauryans, especially Ashoka? In what way Mauryans or Ashoka is connected to these Buddhist stupas? That we will try to understand now. So it represents the spiritual body of Buddha. So let us first describe this architecture and then we will go. So here this stupa has some, it has a spiritual body of Buddha containing his relics such as hair, teeth, or bones. So after the death of Buddha in Kuchinagar, his hair, and teeth, something, they were kept in a casket. Casket means a small box, jewel box you can call. So they were kept in a small jewel box. All this hair or tooth or like his bone, something is kept, and they were buried, and on that they have constructed a dome, spherical shape, semi-spherical shaped structure, and this is called Sanchi Stupa. This is about the description and also what it has. We'll see. So at the base of the dome, so this is the dome, and at the base inside, if you think, at the base of the dome, they have this relic casket box placed on which they constructed this semi-spherical structure. The foundation of this Sanchi Stupa was laid by Ashoka at Sanchi, about 45 kilometers from Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. So, who laid foundation for construction of this Sanchi Stupa? So Buddhism was very much popular by this time, and I told you during the lesson of Jainism and Buddhism, many Kshatriya kings patronized Buddhism, especially Ashoka and all. So it was Ashoka who laid foundation for this Sanchi Stupa in a place called Sanchi. Okay, the name of the place was Sanchi. And where is this Sanchi place? It is 45 kilometers from Bhopal. And in which state? It is present in Madhya Pradesh. Who laid foundation for this? Ashoka. And there are 4 gateways in 4 directions. So for this, suppose you take, this is one gateway and the other side 2. So like this, they have 4 gateways on 4 sides. So behind this dome, we have one more, and they have carved panels depicting events from the life of Buddha and some tales from Jataka stories. So these carved panels you can see here, they're very much curved. So they describe about the life of Buddha. How they describe life of Buddha? Through some short stories and other kind of stories. They describe the life of Buddha. And Buddha was also represented by symbols like people tree, lotus, or a wheel. You can see some inscriptions here having a lotus flower and a people tree symbol. All such things were described as like symbols of Buddha. And these pillars are surmounted by capitals which contain the sculptures of lions. So that means these are the pillars, right? You can see here pillars, and you can see they are surmounted, means on the top of the pillar they were having the lion sculpture as by capitals, means like you can call it like alphabets here. So you can, something was inscribed. What is that capital here? That means capital is not just meaning of capital city and all. Here capital means something representing. So here the lion capital was present on the pillars before the Sanchi Stupa. So this is about the description of Sanchi Stupa. So now this Sanchi Stupa as well as rock edicts, they served as a major archaeological sources for understanding the information about Mauryans.